We are calling to order our special city council meeting today, Tuesday, March 31st, 2026. And if we could please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance and a moment of silence as we humbly seek for wisdom, clarity, and discernment in the work before us. May we be guided in service to this community with fairness, integrity, and responsibility. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. All right, first up today is a new business, and it is discussion and consideration of extending the municipal solid waste collection agreement with Signature Waste. And Charlie, you had provided us with information. Can you recap that for us?
Yes, ma'am. So our current municipal waste collection agreement with Signature Waste is set to expire on September 30th of 2027. The item is before council for discussion and direction on whether we allow it to automatically renew for 2 years as per the contract, or if we put a request for bids out and solicit those bids and bring those back to council. At y'all's previous meeting, council asked for some rate comparisons, which I have provided to council from around the state. Everybody seems to do it a variety of different ways, whether they do it in-house, they contract it out, or like our neighbors in Fort Mill, they split. They do the trash collection in-house, and they contract out the recycle collection. So there's a lot of different ways of doing things. Our rates currently, I would say, are well within the range, if not on the lower end, from what we've been able to gather, from cities of all sizes from around the state. So that's where we're at now. And council, as part of the conversation, deferred it to tonight in order to give time to look into all that stuff. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to you guys for any further discussion or questions that you may have. We'll try to answer those at this time.
Okay. If it's okay with you guys, I'll just start at that end and kind of move this direction with any comments or questions or direction that you each might have, and that might get us to a place where we know where we're going.
Okay, so basically just where we stand on this decision. Yeah, so based on the conversation we had at the last council meeting, I think I'm inclined to move toward putting this out for a bid. It's been several years since we've had that competitive bid process take place. I think especially the question was asked, and I believe, and you correct me if I'm wrong, that we don't have to accept any of the bids in this round. We could actually choose to or elect to extend the current contract.
That is correct. Anytime the city puts anything out for bid, we reserve the right to reject in whole or in part any and all bids. Right. So you would have that opportunity as well once bids come back in.
Okay, great. And I know there was some concern over whether this round of bids could lead to an increase, especially with the increased fuel costs and the increase in cost of everything essentially. But I really see this as a low or non-risky move to make. We don't have to go forward with any of the bids, but at least gives us that competitive process. And I think that's in the best interest in terms of financial stewardship for the city. So that's where I stand.
And Madam Mayor, if I can jump in, just because it was kind of brought up, we are going to be incurring a fuel surcharge of about 24 cents per customer per month until the fuel prices begin to come back down. That threshold, I believe, is like $4.75 per 1,000 gallons, and on diesel, it has to be over that for 4 weeks, and it now has been. So we're looking at that fuel surcharge coming in. Also, Signature Waste notified me the end of last week that they are seeking for this coming fiscal year, which they would be the provider for a good chunk of it. Well, actually, all of it. That would be it for the entire next fiscal year of a 1.5% increase based on tipping fees. Originally, it was discussed at about 3%, but they did come back at a 1.5% for the coming fiscal year.
And to clarify, is that the COLA increase or is that the tipping fee increase?
From what I have been told, it is due to increases in tipping fees at the Fort Mill Transfer Station.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
So that doesn't automatically include the 3% increase that was going to happen with the
That is correct.
3
It's
years?
just a 1.5%.
Just a 1.5?
That's
Okay.
it. Yes, sir.
Okay. So I don't really have any issues with what's going on with Signature Waste and where we're at with the contract right now. I wouldn't mind for it to continue for another 2 years. The cost is roughly $18 per household, which will go up roughly 24 cents per house. That's not that bad. When you sent out everything to have the comparisons between all the other cities, I appreciate that, by the way, we are right in line, and we are lower than most other cities roughly our size. And that's great stuff. We we didn't really have any people come out of the woodworks to talk about any problems that we were having with Signature Waste until we put it on the agenda for the past meeting, and then we had a few, and I believe that a lot of those were actually were taken care of and they were addressed. But with that, I don't think we have any issues. I don't really want to put it back out to bid. I understand of potentially putting it back out to bid to see what we can get, but to save $1 possibly, or $1.50 or something like that, plus or minus one way or another, I don't really think that's worth the staff's time and energy to do that.
Thank you.
Okay, got my microphone on. So yes, thank you, Charlie, for that chart that you provided us with the comparisons. That was very helpful, as Brian has noted, and Jim. Looking at just the contracted ones, because again, comparing us to municipal facilities is difficult because they have a different set of costs and factors by doing it in-house. We were, for any city that's close to our size, the lowest, and even with this pending increase that we know is coming per the contract, which would happen with anybody we're contracted with due to diesel costs and things like that, and tipping fees increasing at the county level, we still are falling pretty much in the lower end. And just to echo, I had brought up, I was concerned about going out to bid, potentially putting us in a position where we actually ended up. So I am glad to hear that if we go that route, I am still leaning towards feeling, I understand there's a community concern about how this happened previously. If a bid is what it takes to put that to rest, I see some value in that, but I also share Councilmember Carter's concerns, though, that how much time, energy, and effort from our staff is going to go into the bidding process, and could that be put to better use in other places when we have a lot of data that shows us it's good. The only question I received after we started this conversation from the community, Brian mentioned we did get some emails after the last meeting, was about recycling. So that I just want to address that super fast. I'll be brief with this. Is that one thing that did come out was people saying, well, we feel like we are getting less because the recycling changed during the last contract process, where it previously was all included and now is done on an opt-in 3-month cycle. Just to address community members sort of directly, we actually have the best model out there. I actually had the same reaction initially when I moved here and was like, wait, why is the recycling going away? And that has nothing to do with the city or anything to do with the contract. That has to do with the state of recycling in our country. I actually went and did a full tour at the York facility. The truth of the matter is, the reason our recycling looks so restrictive is because very little actually gets recycled. And that has nothing to do with our city. That has to do with the industry. And the fact that what we've learned over years is that a lot of stuff is just getting thrown away. And a lot of people who said they were recycling were just taking it straight to the landfill. The other issue is that when we were all-inclusive, is that we were having loads contaminated by people who didn't want to recycle but had the recycling bin and were treating it like a trash can. That's incredibly expensive for the city. Charlie shared the numbers with me, and it's insane how much that costs when you have a contaminated load that then had to go to the trash and was rejected by the recycling center. So it wasn't fiscally responsible. And since we've moved to this model, I think we said we've had one contaminated load in years, versus it was like a weekly occurrence. So I just want the people who are concerned about the recycling. We have recycling. It's an opt-in, and I'm happy to talk because I don't want to spend everybody's time up here because Brian's heard my little soapbox about recycling before. We have a very good model, and part of that is that at the county level, they're very strict for a reason, and so it feels like we're getting less, but it's actually because our stuff is getting recycled, so you are getting value for that money. So I would just say, if the direction that the majority of council wants to go is to put this back out for bid, I feel we should keep that same model for that component of it. I would at least like to ask for that instead of trying to change anything around that, because I don't think trying to ask for all-inclusive is going to get us anything other than lying to the residents about the actual service that we can provide. So that's sort of where I stand, is if the will of the majority is that we want to put this to rest and say, look, we've gotten the data, we've done our due diligence, we've shown the comparisons, but I do still lean more towards, I feel it would be a better use of staff's time to just go with the continuation under the circumstances. And I feel confident in the data I've seen, and I would hope that the residents would trust us, that we've all looked at this very thoroughly and had a lot of discussions, if we go that route to extend the contract instead. So those are my thoughts on it.
Yeah, just to echo what Heather just said, that I know there was some concerns in the beginning about the change in recycling, but it seems like it's worked better in that the people that want to recycle are, and you're not getting those contaminated loads where people are using the recycle bin as a second garbage bin, causing those contaminated loads. So it seems like that model is a good model, and I would like to see that continue, whichever way we go. And as far as Signature Waste, outside of after last month's meeting, or 2 weeks ago's meeting, I've received no complaints. Had a couple emails since, but for the most part, it seems like everyone's pretty happy with what they're doing. And so, however this goes, there's nothing against Signature Waste. It seems like they're doing a good job. But I'm kind of leaning towards putting it out for bid just to see, if we get other bidders in, and so that the residents can see the different options that are available that are put into, potentially be our trash service, and then we do have the option, if nothing good, nothing better, no better options come in, we can continue with Signature Waste. So I really think putting it out to bid gives us the best of both worlds, because we can see if there's a better option, and then if there's not, we can continue as we are with Signature Waste. So that's kind of where I'm at.
Thank you. My comments at the last meeting were that I felt that we had an opportunity, and I also believe a responsibility to have a baseline of information. We've had Signature Waste providing services for our city since either 2005 or 2007, I'm not sure which. And we don't have a market evaluation of what that looks like outside of the service that they've provided for us and outside of the bid that was done in 2022. I also stated that this was not a conversation about service quality or complaint-driven. For me, it's an opportunity to get validation of that data and those numbers in order to have that baseline. Looking at the pricing that was given to us, and identifying those communities that are most like us in number of households. Yes, Signature Waste is providing the lowest service, but that is a number that is being shown to us without any recycling. And some of the communities that have the highest numbers, actually 3 out of the 4 that I'm looking at, include recycling with their numbers. So for our residents that do recycle, and if I'm understanding that correct from a question I asked, the number of residents who use recycle or who have a second bin are close to or just over 50%. And when you add that extra $10 a month, it puts us very much in line, or maybe in some cases a little bit above what is being charged for customers that have the recycling included in their service. So because there's, in my opinion, there's a discrepancy there in whether we are the lowest or not the lowest based on services, I would like to see that as an apples to apples comparison with other services. In addition to that, I just lost my train of thought. I do think that it is important for us to have that. Charlie, you had mentioned that you had already a draft of the bid process already done. So other than us looking at it and maybe making a few additional suggestions, there's really not a whole lot of additional time. And correct me if I'm wrong, there is, I don't want to discredit that. There is going to be time that staff has to spend on this, but the actual bid workup is already drafted.
Yeah, the bid process itself would be minimal from a staff standpoint. The implementation, if council decides to change providers, is a completely different story, but the bid process itself, yes. Just anticipation, if council was going to go the direction it sounds like you may go, Joey and I have already worked through the draft of the RFP and could send it out to council very, very quickly for y'all's review and comments and get it published within the next week or two at the latest.
And again, to reiterate, this is not a decision that we're going to move forward with a different company. It is, if this is the direction of the vote, to me, it's an opportunity to gather information so that we can validate a decision to extend. And that's basically where I am on this. I think that from any other follow-up discussion on that?
I have one more thing. So one other point, we do have at least one community in TKK that has a unique situation in that they have alleyways that were not constructed according to, street code or street standards. And so it appears they're experiencing some premature damage, aging to their alleyways caused by the heaviness of the trucks. So in a community like that, they're looking at having to potentially replace that concrete 8 to 12 years before the life expectancy of it. So not that Signature Waste can't, we need to have conversations, in my opinion, about that moving forward and whether there's some remediation or relief for a community that has unique needs. But one of the possibilities, if we put it out to bid, could something like that be worked into the language of the contract to find a management company that can provide, either specialized services or alternatives for communities that are impacted.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That's a valid point. I know that's been a big part of the discussion for that community. Would council like to present a motion on, I believe the only motion we would need is whether we're going to bid or not, because otherwise it would just follow a contract process, correct?
I would prefer either a motion to let it extend or a motion to put, to direct staff to put it out for bid. So that way it's very clear
Okay.
as to what council's direction is.
All right, well, let's start with a motion to extend. If someone would like to make a motion to extend, please. Having failed with that motion, if someone would like to make a motion for a bid process, please.
Madam Mayor, members of council, I'd like to make a motion to direct the city manager to initiate a competitive bidding process for the municipal solid waste services, including development and issuance of a request. Starting over. I'd like to make a motion to direct the city manager to initiate a competitive bidding process for municipal solid waste services, including the development and issuance of a request for proposals that reflects the service needs of all TKK neighborhoods.
I have a motion. Can I have a second?
Second.
I have a second. All those in favor? Aye. All those against?
Nay.
The motion carries 3-2. Do you need to know who voted how, or you got it? Okay. All right. Next item on the agenda is the start of our workshop, and this is a discussion of a 4-year capital improvement plan. And Charlie, I am going to defer that off for you to get started.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, members of council. So as the mayor stated, the department heads have put together their 4-year, for lack of a better term, I'll call it capital improvements plan. You do have some projects in there. You do have some staff requests. Chief, if you want to go ahead and, Chief Hasty. As Chief Hasty's making his way up to the microphone. We're going to start with the fire department because Chief has another worthwhile engagement to get to. And then we'll jump back in department order. I've asked department heads council to come up to the podium, give a very brief, somewhat overview, and then allow you the opportunity to ask what questions that you may have of their department, and then we'll go to the next department. All right? And so nothing for council to decide on or or vote on through this process. It's really more to just get your questions that you may have, get those answered, and give the department heads an opportunity to present their plans. So, Chief, I'm going to turn it to you.
Thank you. I appreciate your willingness to allow me to go first. Council, good evening. I appreciate the opportunity to be here in front of you tonight. Real quick, I know you guys have all received the capital improvement plan that we've worked on, and I guess the best place to start is all the way at the top. So the biggest ticket item that we're asking for or requesting is the ability to obtain an architectural drawing to expand Station 1. There's a lot of background there. The building that we're in was built, we moved in 2017. That was before my time. It lacks some square footage, and it also lacks some other things. And I'll just start at the very front of this. The building is about 9,000 square feet. It is at 1195 Stonecrest, which you guys all know. We've got 24 full-time people, thank you to you guys, with 3 shifts, supported by 3 administrative staff currently, and then a couple of operational volunteers. Our call volume, just to go backwards a little bit, our call volume has increased by 215% since I've been here, which is pretty significant. The calls for service, those are emergency calls for service. That doesn't include the ancillary that we answer, the phone calls, the different things that we do daily that require the staff man hours to take care of those things. So the projected, 5-year projected for that in this cycle that we're looking at is all growth dependent. You guys can see in the 7 years looking backwards, we've had significant growth, and we still have some significant growth to come, as is evidenced all around us at the fire station. So we've got some deficiencies in space. Many of you have been to the fire station. Y'all know our admin assistant sits in the lobby because there's just nowhere for her to go. The biggest deficiency that we've got is training space. You guys know we have the second stations in the peninsula, right? It's by Rundy Park. It's got a classroom in it. It's a small classroom, and I'll tell you that it creates an issue for us. The biggest issue there is that it's response times. So to get from the back, from Rundy out to the Manors is about 14 minutes for us in a fire truck. So it's not a central location for us, which creates a huge challenge. We need to be able to train our staff at the Stonecrest station. That way we make sure that we're centrally located and can get to both ends of our territory in a quick and expedient time. The other part of that is, and the reason that's important is someone if we're all at Rundy, at Fire Station 2, and we had a call in the Manors, heaven forbid it's a choking or a cardiac arrest or even a house fire, something like that, we're 14 minutes away from it, okay? The difficulty there is we don't last very long without breathing, right? So it's a life threat. And so we've got to really stay tuned into that and try and address it. The other thing that's happened to us is our construction's changed, right? We've gone from the traditional construction that we see in the back in traditional TKK to a very lightweight construction. What we've seen with that is fire doubles in size about every minute in this kind of construction, which leads to collapse much faster. So for us to be delayed 14 minutes, we have seen a significant degradation of the structure and have seen failures. 3 times in the last couple of years, we've had firefighters that have been involved in collapses, whether from a response side or we actually had one that was injured in a collapse. So training in that central training location is very, very important to us. Just timing to get to the delivery of service to the community, and then to make sure that our firefighters are taken care of, because we can make that quick attack and we can go in and save that life, the savable life. So some things with that. Our training space at Station 1, right now we are shoehorned into a conference room. We can't seat everyone there. We end up in the bay space, and you guys know that bay space is like being outdoors. Very difficult to hear, not conducive to a recruit training program, not conducive to classroom training, which is very important to us. We can bring those training classes in. We're working with the State Fire Academy now for us to be able to deliver training in-house. So we don't have to go somewhere to get that training. We don't have to pay someone to come in and do that. We can do it ourselves, but we need classroom space to be able to do that. Some of the things you guys know we deal with NFPA. NFPA is the group that kind of governs what we do. It's the oversight board, right? They make recommendations. So we don't meet, currently we don't really meet NFPA 1550, which is, it's the health and safety standards. It also governs training and those kind of things. So just looking back at that, and I can share all this, I can email this to you if you like. I've got it all. So those are some things that we're working towards. We don't have audio visual. It's very limited where we are now. We need to enhance that. One of the bigger things that we have. Okay.
Council, we'll provide, staff can provide you with all this information. We don't want to sit here and have staff do 45-minute presentations each. So I've asked Chief to get to wrapping this up to give you all the opportunity to ask your questions.
Okay. So some other things, I'll just hit the high points. Sleeping quarters, we're not currently, we're sleeping in a co-ed sleeping situation, which we don't have any way around that. We can't sleep any more people than we currently have, and we have a need to grow because of square footage, everything that's going on around us, right? And again, I'll send this to you so you can review it and we can answer questions. Some things, again, governed by OSHA and NFPA that dictate what we need as far as for hygiene, cleanliness, ventilation, those kind of things. So I'll send this over to you so you can read it. The other thing that we need to address is the fire marshal's office. We don't have a place for a fire marshal, and the projection is by the time we get to the end of this capital improvements program that we'll need a full-time fire marshal to help us to stay ahead of fire prevention education and to take care of the inspections that we are currently missing. We typically have a part-time fire marshal, but that person's been out on medical leave for about a year and a half. So we're trying to work through that. So the administrative office space, I'll just hit the rest of the high points. You know, we're short on space. So what I'm asking for with this budget cycle is the ability for us to utilize or to obtain money for architectural drawing, which does two things for us. It allows us to better identify the total number of square footage that we need, as well as it gives us something solid and concrete to go back and to start applying for grants to try and fund this project. So that's the overview on the building. So what kind of questions do you have?
I've got one, sorry. So you mentioned the NFPA and OSHA considerations as part
Yes,
of
ma'am.
this. So my understanding is the fire station is we're still paying off the original from when it was first built.
Yes, ma'am. I don't know when that bond comes due. 2033.
At the time it was built, were we in compliance with the NFPA and the OSHA standards for the staff we had and things like that?
At that point,
At
yes.
that point, how long would you say have we been out of compliance? When
So-
did that occur?
So I encourage you to come by and
Yeah.
walk through the building with us. We're in a place now where we're in with a shoehorn.
Okay.
You know, just because of the staff we've got.
So this is
the
a recent
building.
development with the compliance side of it, you would say, in terms
Yeah,
of falling out of it due to the increase in staff and,
Yes, and what our future needs are.
Okay.
So typically you build a fire station, you try and build a fire station in any community building, you try and build it for 50 years, right? In about 2 years, we were as tight as we could be in this building. We've made some changes to both buildings to try and better that, but as I said, you know, we've got some challenges as far as training space and our admin assistants in the lobby.
and so is part of the goal of this architectural plan to get back to that projection for the space? So it's not just to meet the need, it's to project for the growth that we see happening?
Yes,
So
ma'am.
that we won't have to revisit this again in Fire
Yes,
station,
ma'am.
okay, thank you. That was
Yeah,
my
that's,
question.
that's it exactly.
First of all, Chief, thank you for your service and for the service of the men and women of the fire department. We really appreciate it. We're a
Thank you.
grateful community. And for a community that takes pride and values public safety, we do definitely need to make sure you have the personnel, resources, and training facilities to do your job properly. So I've taken a tour of the fire department. You led me on one. Thank you for that.
Yes,
And I
sir.
can see how tightly cramped that is. So I believe that you need that space for training and for your firefighters to have a place, hopefully, not exist in a co-ed situation there.
Right.
And so I definitely support providing you with the resources that are needed, and I trust that these are resources that you do need. Question, not necessarily for you, but maybe for our finance folks. So I see in the facilities, the addition of Station 1, we've got, in year one, we're looking at a $280,000 capital expenditure, and then in year two, a $2.8 million. My question is there any way that we can spread that expense over the 3 years, since it's a 3-year plan to design and build this addition?
To do $2.8 million, you'd probably do have to do it, actually, I'm pretty certain you need to do some type of borrowing, and that'd be spread over 10 years.
Okay. That's just-
Based on what our finances are and how this coming budget is looking, and probably the next several budgets, that's the only way that I see feasible for us to spend $2.8 million to do any type of, if that is the cost. Right now, I mean, that's, to me, that's a placeholder. The 280,000 to me is a placeholder. Yeah, until we get bids from architects, engineers to see what that looks like. Yeah, those are placeholder numbers, to be quite honest. And yeah, your 2.8 million estimated remodel cost. Granted, it's been a number of years, but I believe we borrowed 4 million to build the entire station. So, yeah, I know construction costs have gone up. I don't know that $2.8 million is the number. More than 50% of what we paid to build and furnish the existing station. But it could be. Again, we won't know until there's architectural plans done that can give us an estimate. But yeah, 2.8 million, I would not foresee that. I would not propose to council that be a cash funded in 1 year
Right.
type thing.
Yeah,
It just puts too much of a strain on our finances.
Okay, no, it was my assumption we could spread that out. I just wanted to make sure, and thanks for that clarification. Appreciate it.
Yeah, let me offer a little bit of clarification to Charlie's point too. The 280 is a number, right? So what we did is we took information that we were given. So somewhere between $500 and $800 a square foot to add on to existing commercial space is the number that we were given, right? So in typical budget, you shoot for what your worst case is, and then the architectural fees is up to 10% of that, right? It depends. Again, you'd have to go out to bid to get that number and to really hone in on that. But we needed a place to start, and that's what this is.
Go ahead.
Chief, is there opportunity at the old station? I know you're tight on space in a new station, but is there opportunity there or space? I'm just, the 2.8 million, it's a sticker shock to me. I think everyone here knows I've been pushing to try not to spend money because our impact fees long-term are going away, and it scares the heck out of me. I'm just wondering if there's the opportunity at the old station to move your admin or yourself to the old station, get the new living quarters you need, and then try to work outside the box and look at training opportunities. Like you got the beautiful police station with a huge training room. Is that something
Yeah.
that could be used, or just to avoid? Because, I mean, I know last time we met with Bob, our revenue's down already this year, and lot of stuff in this capital improvement plan, and 2.8 million is a big number. So I'm just trying to think. I'm not saying you don't need it, but is there a possibility to look outside the box and come up with another solution to instead of building onto a station we're still paying on. That's,
Yeah, so we've looked at a lot of options, right? And we've got issues there too. The
Yeah.
square footage is a problem at that fire station as well.
Okay.
Uh, Placement's the bigger issue. You know, like I said, response times is what's the most important thing to us. We need to stay central in order to make that happen. And you bring up the police station, that's not off the table either, but even then, it puts us another 5 to 7 minutes back. And you got to think about travel times in a fire truck compared to travel time in your car, right? So you're not as fast off the line. You're not as fast
Right.
in travel. Station 1 is the most central location to be able to do that. We've got, and you haven't been there in a while, but we've got training props and things there that are very important. And I'm not downplaying that at all. And we have looked at a lot of options.
Okay.
And Manager Funderburg and I have talked about what do we do? How can we make it work inside our footprint? Even to the point where I had an architect who's a friend look at it, and he's like, "You're maxed out where you are."
All right. No, I appreciate
So-
it. Want to make sure I ask.
But, and like I said, this is to get us started, and the hope is that we can turn around, and I've got some grant opportunities, rural development grants, community block grant, or brick grants. So there's some grants out there that could help us with that. But I've got to have a plan before I can go out and try and solicit those grants, because I don't have any idea. Today, I've got an idea how many square feet, right? But I don't have a good grasp on cost or anything else to be able to start soliciting and start writing grants to try and obtain that money.
Question on funding. Impact fees are allocated towards this type of use. Is that
And
correct?
right now, from the fire, they're paying the bond debt on the current fire station.
Okay, so the use of any impact fees at this point is off the table because that's what's being used for.
I would
the
highly
fire.
discourage it, yes, ma'am.
Okay. You made a statement that you don't have anywhere for more firefighters to land, to sleep. So how does that affect your ability to hire in the next 2-4 years,
So-
if that's the case?
Yeah, so what we're doing is so if someone's on vacation, sick, FMLA, whatever, right? So we've talked about hiring one at a time over the next few years. And there's no staff in this. You've seen the CIP. What we'd do is that person, the extra person, would ride out of Station 2 until we had a vacation, a sick, something that would trigger the overtime that you guys talk about. Our overtime is what it is, right? But that person would help to fill that vacancy until we could fix our sleeping situation at Station 1. So the day that we ride completely full it's not. Right now, our minimum staffing is 6. In the new budget, we're going to take our minimum staffing to 7, which gives us, only one person on engine 1. We're fully staffed at 8, right? But there's always a vacation, a sick, with FMLA, children, people have children, our guys are young, ladies are young. So, there's always someone off.
So right now you have space for one hire, but that would be it until something got corrected with this,
Well, yes.
okay.
Yeah, so if we were at 9 today, if we had 9, if we were full 3, 3, and 3, we would shuffle that person off because there's going to be a vacation, a sick.
Got it.
And so there's going to be a place, but we want to guarantee that we're putting at least 2 people on that engine as it rides out the door.
You brought up the logistics and the distance a couple of times. So where you are right now at Station 1 on Stonecrest,
Yes, ma'am.
to get to the furthest new TGK area,
Mm-hmm.
or to get to the furthest peninsula area,
Right.
are you halfway on both?
We're pretty evenly split.
Okay.
In order to be evenly split, we would need to be back this way just a little bit. But we are. It's a pretty long ride. If you ride from Station 1 to the Manors, it's probably, well, I can't say with the new Main Street going through, or the Grove, whatever the street's gonna be called there, that'll help our response times in that direction a little bit.
Okay.
But we push our response times out to the edge there.
I think that, like Council Member Heislip has said, for me, it's not a question of whether it's a need for now or the very near future. It's on the funding of it. If the impact fees that are allocated to the fire department are now being used to pay off our current debt, how much longer do we have that, those impact fees to be used in that way? And then with new debt, where does that come from, from a perspective of paying it? I would like to see what grants you would be looking at and what those totals are, because then it might help me kind of, find that this makes sense place.
Yep.
It's definitely not a conversation of, we are growing and there's going to be an opportunity and a need for more.
Right.
And I know how heavily you plan on and use the training that your guys do, and that's certainly part of what makes you a great department. And what I do know about you is that you will find the grants and you will find the ways. So I want to be part of that find the ways process. But I need a lot more information on that part.
Right. Well, and like I said, and not to go backwards, but we need a place to be able to start. I don't have a starting point. And I know a square footage amount, but I don't have any kind of design or cost, or I don't have a way to go and talk to a builder because I don't know the what.
How did the 280,000?
So it's based off of about 3,000 square feet, and it works backwards. So that's a 10%, that's $800 a square foot. The 10% plus the architectural fees, that's where those numbers came from, using
Okay.
worst case numbers, right? I had to have a place to start, and that's what you do when you budget at home. In everything you do, you
So
start.
that's based on the
with-
same square footage that the total cost came from?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. I don't have any more questions.
So, Charlie, you mentioned, so really what we're looking at is that this would go out to bid. Step one is the architectural review. So just like any other bid, we'd have the option that if we don't like the numbers that come back, to say, no, we're not moving forward to this. Is my understanding? Because
That
we
would
would put the architectural
In a
review out
nutshell,
to
yes,
bid.
that would be correct. But before we went out for bid, I would want to make sure that in our coming fiscal year that we actually have the money to pay
Yeah,
for
But
this
which is what this
anticipated
number is the
cost.
placeholder to make sure that if we decide to progress, we've got something slotted in for sort of a max. It sounds like you've tried to make this a max amount that
I
you would
did.
predict. We've covered that, starting this. If this does get put out for bid and we have the architectural review done, how long is that good for? Is there some sort of limit on it? So like if we have that done, you said this is sort of the starting point for anything to move forward. But we say we don't have the money to actually build it. Is there a limit on how long that lasts before it could then be used for possibly down the line to do the building?
Building plans are good up until the International Building Code changes.
Okay, so
So I would
there's
say
nothing that
for
says
a
that by committing
number
to
of
the
years. yeah.
review, we're committing to the build immediately either. It's that then is sitting there available for use when the money either is
I
found
think-
through grants or things.
The biggest variable would be construction costs, labor costs.
Yeah,
that
and
would
I
be
mean,
the-
obviously, I'm not a fan of sitting on it, but I'm just saying it's not like we're locked into, this starts a process where the ball starts rolling and we can't stop it if we need to.
Chief, thank you so much for presenting everything. Completely understand what you're looking at. I know that this is just a placeholder. It'd be very interesting to see what the architects would come back with the building design and what they can do for Station 1 in
Yes,
order to increase the size. And then obviously would have the conversation about the cost of that, and that would be down the road. But I think that's the first place to go. So thank you for bringing it to our attention. And if we have it in the budget, we're hooking you up.
Thank you.
I will have more questions about the fire truck and the Tahoe, but I think that we can leave that for
Okay.
another time,
Okay.
since it's not immediate.
Yeah, that's fine. I've got fleet information and all that. If you'd like to have it, I've got it.
Thank you.
So,
Thank you, Chief.
yes,
Thank
sir.
you.
Thank you. Appreciate you guys.
All right, next up, we'll have Nick Cawthon from Development Services with what he's forecasting in that department.
Good evening. Hope you are doing well tonight. So I will make this short and sweet and be available for any questions. So I'll start with the new staff request. And so at this time, just to give everyone a little bit of background, existing staff can only respond to issues as they arise due to other daily responsibilities, which limits proactive code enforcement. Also, having a hybrid in-house inspector reporting directly to the building official would help our department a lot and serve as a backup for our building official. And currently, the city uses a third party to do all of our building inspections. So there could potentially be, we would have a major service gap there if they were to unexpectedly discontinue services as our other provider did recently. And some of the other items that may not immediately come to mind with the code enforcement officer as well, it's not just, high grass or, illegal vehicles. A couple of the other items that I did want to mention, one is assisting our building official in finaling out permits. So for instance, a lot of people will come and get permits and they never call in any inspections. So it's either they didn't do the work or more times than not, they did the work, the contractor leaves, a lot of times homeowner does not know, and it can create a safety situation, but also liability down the road because, there's no inspections. So that's one proactive measure that, additional staff member could take on. Another item is business license enforcement, and that could take a few different angles, but one that immediately comes to mind would be contractors that don't need a permit and also don't have a brick and mortar business in the city, such as landscapers, pest control, painters, trucks that we see every day. A lot of these folks, I would argue to say, I don't have a percentage, but a lot of these folks don't have a business license. We don't have the staff to, track them down. Obviously, if we're on site, doing an inspection and there's another contractor there, we check that out, of course, and send them to City Hall or send them away. But there's a lot of additional revenue that I do think could be captured with more code enforcement. So I'll move on to the, I'll stop at that one. Does anyone have any questions about that item
So
specifically?
it looks like the code enforcement officer is for 27, 28, the fiscal year there, but not next year. Do you think that code enforcement officer is needed for next fiscal year?
So I know
Or-
Charlie and I had that discussion
Yeah.
about moving it up potentially.
It's really going to depend on council's direction, and as with everything that you'll see tonight, what the budget can afford,
Yeah.
to be quite honest. But, so I'll take the blame for, back when I became city manager in 2013, for years, we had routinely heard from residents a phrase of "Welcome to the People's Republic of TKK." A lot of that was because of code enforcement, where we used to have a dedicated code enforcement officer, and that's all he did, was ride around looking for things that were a code violation, taking pictures, sending out notice of violation, issuing fines as may be necessary, and things like that. In 2013, we took a more reactionary approach. Somebody calls and complains, you go out and investigate, and you do your job. If you're driving from point A to point B and you see a violation, it's your job to respond. Based on some recent conversations, primarily with Mayor Miller, we're trying to get a little bit more proactive to where Nick's got one of his team members that's going around at least once a month, hitting a specific area of town. We don't get a whole lot of code complaints in Lakeshore or in I'll call it the newer areas of town off the peninsula. It's primarily traditional TKK is where we end up having more of our code complaints, more of our code violations. And a lot of that's due to lack of an HOA in the vast majority of the peninsula area. We've got Callaway Pines, Silver Gull, Beach Club Townhomes, and Daybreak Townhomes are your HOAs on the peninsula. So, so Nick and his folks, PD has also been very gracious to assist as they're able to, kind of putting that team effort. But as Nick stated, we're only going to be able to be proactive to a point, just based on bandwidth. And it's simple as that. So I guess whether it really needs to be strongly considered for 26, 27 in that budget process, or delayed till 27, 28, is really going to depend on how much council wants an emphasis on proactive code enforcement. I hate to put it on you guys, but when we get complaints, we respond on those very quickly. Now, some folks don't understand there's a cure period with the notice of violation. It's just not all of a sudden you see something, hit somebody with a fine. You got to put them on notice and give them the opportunity to correct and that kind of thing. I know Nick's got a much easier way of tracking repeat offenders or what types of violations we're having with the Evolve platform. And we do have the public-facing side of that platform live where people can, and they don't even have to give their names. But they do have to give us an address of where it is they're seeing this potential code thing. And we're able to respond on those. And is it at the level that council wants? I'll say probably we started this back in February. So it's been on, 2 months at this point. So, and we'll continue those efforts. But we're only going to be able to take code enforcement up to a point and, with the staff that we have.
Just to address that conversation, what I have heard from both you and Nick is that you, at this point, are comfortable in absorbing what you are doing when it comes to code enforcement, and that's why it was put in that 27, 28 timeline, based on what you are doing right now. To address the complaint-driven, which is what you described happened, in my time speaking and 2 campaign seasons and door knocking and conversations, this has been brought up significantly as an issue. I think it's not the type of statement that we want to make, to say, if you're willing to turn in your neighbor, then something might be done about it, which is sort of what we have. If you file a complaint against a neighbor, then something might be done. But we have ordinances that specifically address issues and how they should be taken care of. So from my perspective and the conversations that we've had is that if we have an ordinance, why isn't it being followed? And if we have a need, then that's what we need to bring up and speak to as a council. If we're going to change the standards, then that needs to be a council conversation, not a lack of enforcement direction that is not voted on or changed. So from that perspective, those have been the conversations. Is we should not be expecting neighbors to turn in neighbors. We should be a standard-driven, not a complaint-driven, and we have the ordinances that have been in place for many, many years that have set the standards of what the city is supposed to be when you don't have that HOA protection. So from that perspective, whether it's we need someone to take this role in 26, 27, my understanding was that there was enough bandwidth to absorb that at this point, and it wouldn't have to be added personnel until 27, 28. But obviously, it's a discussion that we can have depending on how we want to move on what you're saying, which is added time.
We have definitely increased our efforts with the bandwidth that staff has at this point, for sure. And we've taken that and made that a focal point, for sure. Whether it's to the level that council wants it to or not, I think it might be too soon to tell. But it is definitely a focus point for us, but it's not an every single day of the week type focus. That bandwidth just doesn't exist. But there is time being carved out on a monthly basis to go out and try to be proactive. I think, Nick, at least on one occasion when y'all rode around, we ended up doing, 23, 24 some odd notifications. So we're able to make those efforts. I guess the good thing is this isn't citywide. It would take more than just a few hours of driving around during the day, but going and finding the violations is just one part of it, right?
Yeah, the significant time part of it's not identifying. We can easily ride around and, find, it's the follow through. And also being fair across the board, not, we could, pick a couple streets, but, when we get complaints, we do that, or if we know there's an issue, we do that, but I don't feel that's personally fair to, pick individual areas, but to really to be proactive for the entire, I'll call it, city that doesn't have HOAs is where, we struggle as is, so.
You want to move on to?
Yes, I'll move on. So the next item is the vehicle. So the vehicle, I'll keep this one very brief, but it's twofold. We have aging Priuses with mounting maintenance costs that exceed the value of the cars at this point. And also our environmental compliance officer really needs to have a four-wheel drive vehicle to do his job in a timely manner. The next item is zoning code rewrite. This has pushed out a couple of years, but I want to give a brief synopsis on this. So many times a zoning code rewrite will succeed a comp plan rewrite. It's not required each time, but typically after multiple decades, I believe around 2000 was our last zoning code update or creation. It makes sense to look at that and update everything from parking to landscaping to the individual zoning districts to see if they make sense. And also after 25, 30 years, there's a lot of uses that simply didn't exist 30 years ago, or there may be a completely different sentiment regarding that use now. So there's a lot of different items that the zoning code addresses like that. And you can certainly do text amendments for isolated items like we have done since my time here. But once you start getting into wholesale changes, instead of typically you would want to do an entire rewrite, because once you start piecemealing, there's contradictions. You get into it can be extremely hard to interpret from a staff or citizen level and to enforce. So that was added, and then the last is the comprehensive plan update, which will come be time 4 to 5 years from now due to the state requirement. So that's all that I had. If anyone has any other questions, I'd be glad to answer.
Yeah, so looking at the cost for both the zoning code and comprehensive plan update, where are those figures? How did you derive those figures?
Yeah, so I used the comprehensive plan, factored in some inflation based off what we just paid for this past rewrite, and really just my best guess as to what that may look like. Zoning code, I talked to some colleagues of some other places and factored in we are smaller. Obviously, it's a rough estimate, particularly 3-4 years out, but that is a very labor-intensive process, much more so than the comp plan, because that's, day one, someone submits a permit, everything's changed. So you're really getting into the nuts and bolts of, all of our land use.
Right, and I guess for my edification, are we working with a third-party consultant to do that?
Yes. So for the way that our department is structured, any type of major effort like that would have to be, we would have to hire a third party, because we do not have a dedicated long-range planning staff member or segment of our department to take that on in-house.
Okay.
What made the year, was it 28, 29? Yeah, 28, 29, the year for the rewrite and not sooner, since it hasn't been done since the year 2000?
Right. So, I mean, my initial thought on that was just with the Grove really getting ramped up, starting last year, and also, we'd have River Falls closing up, Wendell Woods finishing out, potentially Alderwood, just a lot of the items in the pipeline, I think would, in my opinion, would give us time to see that, hey, this is what we have, we may have some, there could be some smaller annexations in the future, but just kind of a reset for us as far as
About-
major new development.
About how long does the process usually take? Because then right after that, we have the next comp plan. Right.
The next year, yeah, that's fair. It takes a year plus. Yeah, I would say long. It really depends. It really depends. I've went through one, and at another jurisdiction. I think I see what you're getting at there.
Well,
Like,
yeah,
it may make sense to, come time to marry those together a little bit, where yeah.
I would think you'd
Right.
want to have the zoning changed before the next comp plan
Mm-hmm.
is being put in place, because obviously one will speak to the other
Right.
as we plan for that.
And I will say that then the one for 2930 would be an update instead of a rewrite, but sometimes those can morph into a rewrite. It just, depends where we are.
Okay, yeah, that
Yeah.
would be my
Mhm.
thought on that.
Yeah.
One more thing, if we just back up just for a second to the code enforcement officer and building inspector. So the third-party provider that we're currently working with, is that just for building inspection, or is that?
Yeah, so
Mhm.
they conduct all of our building inspections. Our building official, from time to time, will go out if it's an immediate need or, special projects like, over here.
Yeah,
with the
and is that a fixed fee, is that a contract, or what are we paying for that?
Yeah, it's a contract.
Do we know how much that contract costs the city?
And I don't have it right now, but
Okay,
Yeah, we're, so they're the only provider. We're paying them approximately, approximately $11,000 a month. They come to the city every single day because our load is so high. Basically, they hired an individual because of us to come to the city every day to do inspections, so,
wow, so we pay them $11,000 a month to do that, for that service?
exactly.
Wow,
yeah, yeah.
okay, great. No further questions. Nick, thanks for what you and your department do, we appreciate it. Thanks for the information.
Absolutely.
This is just a silly note, but Charlie, the totals, it says $40,000 under fiscal year 26, 27, but it looks like it should be $45,000 from the car request. Just
Yeah,
a
your
small,
formula's
small
off on
typo.
there.
well, I'll make that adjustment.
Yeah, sorry.
Anything else for Nick? All right. As we're waiting on Tim to come up to the mic, I realized that as I was scrolling to Nick, I skipped admin, so I'm going to hit it real quick as Tim is coming up. There's nothing real crazy in there. Yeah, so we do, our server at City Hall is reaching its end of useful life. So we are trying to program that into the next fiscal year, because that is a desperate, we won't be able to continue to survive without the server. The financial software with the utility billing package, we've been on QS1, or they're now public, for a number of years. It has a lot of limitations. We went with it years ago because of the pricing and the fact that they could pick up our utility billing. And this was back in 2014/2015. It's right after we brought on over 1,700 new water and sewer customers with traditional TKK when we purchased the former TK Water Service. And the accounting software we had just could not handle that many customers. So that's your admin software piece. And then the admin vehicle, that's just a replacement. I will say right now there aren't any mechanical or serious issues with the vehicle. It is a 2017, so it's almost 10 years old, with over 177,000 miles on it. And the current value on it's listed at only 5,700 and change. But again, that's just a placeholder in that year. It will need to be replaced at some point, but right now it is functioning as it should. So, knock on wood, don't see any issues with it, and may be able to get to 27, 28 and not have to replace that. But the more miles that get on it and the more age it gets on it, obviously the lower the value on the trade-in once we do sell that. But that is the admin, those three items. And Tim, come on up to the podium. Any questions from me on admin? Good. All right, so now we're going to jump back down the line to Public Works. And Tim's got quite the list, so he'll hit a quick overview for you and then give you time, because Tim's also got stormwater as well. So, Tim?
Hey, how are y'all today?
Evening.
I just wanted to say that this is not my list, this is my team's list. We met several times to come up with this list and tried to be as fiscally responsible and push this where it needs to be as best we could. So I'm assuming you all have had this list and looked at it. I just wanted to highlight a couple of things. Because of our recent snow event, we have not had a plow on a truck for several years now, and we feel that we need that to help clear the roads. The plow, what it does is as it angles, it helps push the snow to the side rather than the machines that we have now just push it straight forward, which allows for a not as good of a clean push when you're clearing that debris. We also have some things on there for this year that we'd like to add. We're thinking we would need a new team member. The addition of this manpower will enable the department to be more efficient with our curbside collection as well as getting projects done at the same time. We don't have enough personnel to split the crew into two while we're doing curbside collection in order to get something else done. So that extra manpower will help us do that. Let's see, the big thing that's on there is the leaf collection vehicle. The one that we have now is currently out of service. It is broken. It is the really old one. The truck is in great condition. It's only got like 22,000 miles on it. So we're hoping to get that old body taken off of it and put a new dump bed on it so we can use that as a future dump truck, which that would help our fleet out a lot. Let's see what else is on there. I think that's all for now, other than the trucks that we would like to replace as part of our vehicle replacement program, because our oldest vehicles are pushing 200,000 miles and are more than 14 to 15 years old. Is there any questions you would have as far as my list goes today?
Tim, I got what about the team members? I just want to clarify. I know when the last couple of years, we got the grapple truck, and last year during the budget workshop, we were talking about the efficiencies, the grapple truck and new dump trucks, so that we wouldn't need team members. But now we need team members. So I'm just trying to clarify from last year's conversation to this year's, the change. It wasn't you, I believe it was Joey was discussing it with us about, anyone else remember this? The grapple truck plus the dump trucks would enable them to be more efficient and free up the team members to do other stuff. Yeah. Can you hear me? Sorry. Yeah, I was just saying, so if you couldn't hear me, that I thought last year when we talked about it, we got the grapple truck 2 years ago. Last year we got some dump trucks. The selling point was increasing the efficiency so we wouldn't need team members, because it would take, I can't remember, it was like they're doing it with 4 people, but with this grapple truck and the dump truck, they can do it with 2. But now we're saying we need team members to do what we're.
As we go year to year, and I've experienced this before I was city manager, your volumes continue to increase year after year. Windhaven is now coming online. Are we going to be picking up a whole lot of brush in Windhaven? No, not yet, but we will be picking up some. And I think as what Tim said was, this allows our curbside collection process to continue while being able to split the crews up to where other projects can be done. That right now, everybody gets dedicated to curbside collection for 3 days out of the week minimum.
Sometimes 4.
And that's something that Tim and his team tracks as far as average number of days that we're picking up brush and things like that. But, yeah, there's project, there are a lot of weeks where we get put into a position where you can't start a project until Thursday, to where you've got enough staff to be able to start tackling that project. So this is just being prepared before we're behind is what Tim's looking for here. He's showing one in the coming fiscal year, and then the other two not until 28, 29. Yeah, and again, that would obviously get a lot of evaluation through the budget process as we lead up to those, as to, okay, is that still a need for two, or is it a need for just one at that point, based on what we're experiencing, what we're seeing in the field?
I distinctly remember last year, though, that we were told if we bought this new equipment, it would reduce the number of people needed to free them up.
That was when we bought the grapple truck 2 years ago, yes. The dump trucks that we got for this year were because we were basically out of dump trucks. So we needed the dump trucks for this current year so we could continue to. The grapple truck did save us, and it is a fantastic tool, and we get a lot of use out of that for sure.
Yeah, I remember, I'll have to go back and look, but I do remember last year we talked about it. You had the grapple truck, and then we needed these other vehicles because the other ones were too big, and we needed some small ones, and it would do exactly what we're saying we need to do now. And I know we're growing, and we're gonna need more team members. I'm just trying to reconcile what we
Yeah,
did last year.
obviously the videos are there, sorry if I can just chime
Yeah,
in.
absolutely.
I remember that discussion from watching it. One of the big points I took away from it that I'm remembering from my memory, and I'll go watch the video too, was it wasn't just about freeing up team members, it was about the health and safety of the team members was a big component of that you
Yes,
guys
so
had the
we had to
discussion
do
about,
it.
so they weren't getting injured. But I remember there being discussion that this is a patch to try and stretch, like, we're still running at full capacity for our staff, was the way I remember that conversation. I mean, we
remember
can go
talking
back and,
about
it's all online, so we can go look at the YouTubes, with all our Kobe's free time. I noticed, sorry, I'm just gonna ask you, so, you mentioned the leaf truck, are we discussing stormwater right now too, or did you want to stick to public works first? But just since it got mentioned, because I know you're doing kind of
You
both.
can go to stormwater if you would like.
It's all together, yeah.
So you mentioned that the leaf truck, this would be the older of the two.
Yes.
And this one was pretty much out all season, was my understanding. I mean, it was down a
It
no,
broke the
wasn't.
first week, and it was the internal parts for the vacuum machine that's on the back of the truck.
Yeah, because I see here what you're saying is that the truck itself is also old, but that they could be repurposed. But so
Right.
because of that, though, it's still that the back part, the mechanism that actually does the leaf vacuuming is what's basically hit the point. And I know there's a very limited market for, like, I think 2 providers for leaf trucks. Everybody has to buy from the same place, so it's not like there's a huge market for leaf trucks. But are there concerns with because we have the newer one, how was that one holding up in terms of how often it was down? Like, I mean,
It made it through the whole season, and it
Okay.
seems to be, we haven't gone through it to replace some of the wear parts yet, but we will this summer and get it ready for the next season. We hope to have 2 trucks running if we're allowed to purchase a new one.
What's-
The old one is not going to be back in service anytime soon. They've sent the wrong parts twice, and the parts are very expensive.
okay, so this is a maintenance cost issue in terms
Yes.
of, like, if you can even get the parts.
Right.
And I remember when I first moved here, one of the issues too was even with the newer parts, there was just you were having trouble predicting when they would send you the parts. So is that problem seem to have resolved with the newer one, where if there's issues with it, getting parts is not as much of an issue as it used to be?
Not as much of an issue, but
Because I know some of that was related to
the
circumstances
newer one
at the
is a
time.
different company, but the old company has bought the new company, so it's all one company now.
Just to make it fun for you
So there's one leaf
guys.
truck company that's buying up all the others.
So that's part of the issue, is that.
That's part of the
If we're
issue,
committing
yes.
to this, we're committing to the monopoly of the leaf truck empire. So, okay,
There you
thank you for
go.
that clarification.
Looking at the request for the street sweeper, that's a new, we don't
I've
have a
been
street
putting
sweeper
that
now?
on for a
or-
decade or so, and it keeps getting shot down. Ever since Bob Barkin started living here, he's wanted us to have a street sweeper. And right now, as I ride around and I look at the different intersections around the city, especially Hubert Graham Way and the circles and the different places on Stonecrest and Windward and some other places, all the intersections have debris in them. That right now, we have to send somebody out there with a broom, a flat shovel, and a bucket, cones, and safety vest galore. That's the only way that's getting picked up, unless we have a street sweeper. And that will also help with our stormwater maintenance because it helps keep the gutter clean and keeps our stormwater infrastructure from accepting so much debris, which helps with the clogs. And it's so far out because it's a large item. We're hoping that one day we can be able to afford that, and that would be super great.
Charlie, for these expenses that are, 28, 29, or even 27, 28, definitely 29, 30, what's the plan? Like, how are we going to know that we are able to say, yes, we're going to be able to fund that in that $275,000 sweeper in 2028?
So right now, the way we've always tackled vehicles and equipment is what can the budget afford? What can it absorb from a cost standpoint? Over the last 4 years, we've eliminated all but one lease, and that one's still remains in TCUD, and that was on a water, when we replaced we took out a loan to basically replace system-wide the majority of our water meters. So that one comes off in December of 2027, but that's, again, in TCUD. In general fund, really the only consistent fleet replacement that we have focused on, at least it's over the last 15 years, has really just been in PD with patrol cars and getting that on a replacement cycle to where, and when Chief Crosby comes up, and you'll probably hear him say, we basically have to replace 3 patrol vehicles in PD every year. Now, last fiscal year, during the budget process, staff was challenged with having the same type of plan for our maintenance vehicles. And so that is something that we're still working through. But if you were to ask me right now, how can we afford a $275,000 street sweeper in 28, 29? My honest response would be we can't, unless we do a short-term capital lease on it. One of those 4-year notes. That's where it sits right now. But that is something that, right now, our department heads have done a lot of heavy lifting, if you will. And a lot of it is because of changing the fiscal year. We got to October and there wasn't really a whole lot of time to breathe. Hey, we're going to do fiscal year. Now it's, we got to hurry up and get ready because we're about to be in budget workshops again, right? So a lot of that, plus putting this together, Mayor Miller and I have exchanged some emails. Some great ideas coming through that as far as trying to target the fleet replacement specifically, and how we can cycle that through and things like that. And it's going to come with growing pains. It did with PD. Before Chief Parker got here, we didn't have a fleet replacement program even with PD. And it took him, he was chief for 7 years, and it took him to about halfway through before he was able to get it on a cycle where we were able to get some things paid off. And, okay, let's replace a couple things a little bit early so everything's not at the same time, right? To try to avoid those large loans or, geo bond debt and things like that. So if I recall correctly, I think the last time a council did a geo bond debt was related to the 18 Greens when they all died at the same time. That was the last geo debt that was issued by the city. Now, there's been some bonds since then, but not geo debt. With the fire station, the police station, Catawba Park, that type thing. When former Mayor Gray came on council, the direction was, we want to pay off we want to pay cash for whatever we're getting, and we want to eliminate the short-term leases. And that's what we've done over the last 4 years. So, we hit that mark. How much of a bind does that put us in now? I think it just depends on how you want to look at it, honestly. Council did afford us the opportunity to do a short-term lease this past year. Got a lot of new needed equipment, most of which we've been able to deploy. I say equipment, primarily vehicles. We've been able to deploy a lot of those, and it's been very beneficial. But that's how we've historically looked at it: is what can the budget afford without increasing taxes, without increasing this, without increasing that? What can we afford to put in? So council's obviously going to have a big stake in that as far as that direction and what you want to see as a council. During your term on council, it may be the same as what it's been the past 4 years. Okay, then that's our job to try to figure that out. Through the budget process. As I told department heads as we've met since they put this together, if something doesn't get afforded in the budget process, it doesn't come off the list. It just scoots back 1 year until we can afford to put that in or identify that funding to be able to put that in. Because there's some one-time cost in there for sure, just projects and things like that. But for the most part, from what I've seen out of their list, it's needs. But without coming up with new revenues, with the growth having slowed down, growth, not growth, as the growth has slowed down, which it has. You go back to 2010 to probably 2019, it was going like gangbusters, but we haven't done a whole lot of annexations. Alderwood, not counting the 2 individual lots that council recently did, you got Alderwood, and it's 55 homes. Now, granted, they're going to be very big homes, very, very expensive homes. Real estate's slowed down from what we see. The new homes aren't going as quickly, so we're being very cautious in the upcoming fiscal year. And when we get to those budget workshops, you may see my recommendation that we don't fund any of it. But that's why I've been locked in my office with Bob and Dana for the last week and a half, just crunching numbers to see what we can do.
So, and I'm going to use the street sweeper as just kind of an example. So if we were to say, you know what, our town cannot survive without the street sweeper in 28, 29, is an option to say, okay, over the next 3 years until that item comes up to actually be purchased, that your budget will include, just like you have the $150,000 across the board for the vehicle replacements, that budget will include $100,000 that is going to be put towards this cost because we've determined that we have to have that expense. It seems like that type of planning is something that I would like to know and see, so that we're not sitting at 28, 29 and saying, well, it was a nice thought, but Tim, sorry, it's going to be another 10 years before we look at it again. And I guess that's what I'm looking for.
Yep.
When I look at these big expenses that are,
And
3, 4, 5 years out. What are we going to do now that are actually going to get us there? If as a council and as staff, we are deciding that these are absolute necessities that we need to look at as we see them today.
So, I think I would say I've got 2 thoughts on that. And you and I have discussed that specifically as far as trying to put money aside and building a capital reserve fund, if you will. Would love to. Would absolutely love to. But I got to be able to afford it, to put it in there, right? And that's more of a April budget workshop type conversation. But I'll also say, and I will say this since Bob went to go watch his grandson's baseball game, and he's not in here. I mean, we're $3.2 million over our minimum threshold in reserves. We've got $7.5 million sitting in reserves right now based on the 25% that we put on ourselves in our code technically you only need 4 million and change in there, and I'm using round numbers at this point, right? So you're about $3.2 million to the good over what we require ourselves to have in the code. Maybe a portion of that goes towards capital, right? Or a capital reserve fund too, because right now what we've got in reserves, other than the funds that are, and I don't even know that these are included in there. I'll retract what I said. I wish Bob was here because he could absolutely say, but we do have earmarked funds for Windhaven Park, the developer donation, right? That they had to pay us as part of their PDD. But outside of that, it's unrestricted cash. Yeah, Bob and I specifically have budgeted since 2007, 2008 to build that up because we used to not have much of a reserve, if any at all. And now we're sitting at over $7 million, which is great. Every year, we're putting between $100,000, $200,000, $300,000 back into reserves at the end of the fiscal year, revenues over expenses, to where we don't need to budget to put into reserves the way we used to. Now we just try to keep a operational contingency in the budget for those uh-ohs, really big uh-ohs. Well, we've got reserve funds there, and we had a really big uh-oh in September 2 years ago, year ago, 24, I think it was, with Helene, right? So we were able to pull some of those reserves, specifically get the soccer fields repaired before while we're waiting on the insurance and FEMA reimbursements, right? And as we sit right now, we are in the hole off of everything with Helene by about $373, and we have another check coming from FEMA for about $20,000. So we'll be on the plus side at the end of the day, but we had to get there. So reserves do come in handy. But on the flip side, that's why you've got almost $9 million in your 8% debt limit that, the council could issue a GO bond for a big uh-oh, right? A big unexpected type thing if it came to that. So I think those are a lot of good conversations that are probably best had during our budget workshops as we're looking at those. But I heard you loud and clear when you and I met about it, and I'll be honest, have not gotten to that point with this upcoming fiscal year yet, because we're still playing with the revenues and taking even deeper dives into the operational expenses, and I think you'll be very pleasantly surprised at the level of detail that you're going to get. And I'm going to go ahead and apologize. It's a lot, but our department heads do a great job of operating very, very lean budgets. To make I'll call it make the magic happen year after year. And they have for a long, long time. But the way we've accomplished this in the past is we've done those short-term leases. And growth has been able to help us, because every year the tax base kept growing, right? So these are all things that make it difficult in budgeting. We're forecasting out through June of 2027. That's a hard thing to do. There's a lot of variables, and it requires a lot of work for sure. But yes, would love to be able to start a capital reserve fund where every year we're sticking money, some sum of money, whether it's $50,000 or $200,000 or whatever the case may be. This is for future capital that's identified in the capital improvement plans, even if it's just limited to, fleet and equipment, replacement, that kind of thing. But those are definitely good budget workshop conversations for sure.
Charlie, just to, excuse me, build on what you said, I know the 4 years I've been here, we've had between like $200,000 or $500,000 at the end of the year that we had more revenue than we expected, minus expenses. That potentially, as we go into the budget workshops, we could look at, even if it's just a portion of that, go into a capital reserve fund, the rest go into the regular reserve to identify these specific purchases.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Keep that,
Yeah.
good train going.
Yeah, Bob Barkin would probably slap me in the back of the head for even mentioning the reserve fund that he's built up and even touching any portion of that. But at the end of the day, if there are needs there are funds there, right, that could absolutely be used. But again, that's not for tonight's conversation, tonight's decision, but definitely something that will probably be discussed at your April budget workshops, for sure.
Thank you. And I think that same thought process goes towards the additional big dollar expenses that are listed on here with parking lots and, well, actually, I think all of them are parking lot related.
Yes.
Again, understanding that there's a need, we want to focus on reinvesting back into our infrastructure, into our city, and that's important. It's important to me to know that what we're doing today is going to impact the city in a good way in 10, 15 years. But it would make me feel a whole lot better to know that we've also taken steps to at least mitigate some of that expense so that it's actually a doable rather than just a wish list. And I do appreciate how much time and effort and thought has gone into making these. I know it's not a process that has been gone into this much level of detail in the past. So it is a learning curve. It is a process, and I know that I appreciate being able to forecast and see it, to know that this is what we're looking at today, but we have 4 years to look at these other things, and how do we account for that? So thank you very much to all of you guys for having worked on that. I definitely know it's a process.
Any other
Thank you.
questions for Tim on Public Works Stormwater at this point?
All right, well, thank you.
I haven't looked at
Thank you
stormwater,
for
so
being
maybe I'll
part
have
of my
some.
38th budget presentation.
Thanks, Tim.
So we've done stormwater. So Chief Crosby, you're up, sir.
Good evening, council. Thank you for the opportunity to talk to you tonight. A lot of the information I'm going to give you, you're going to have a substantial amount more in the budget package that you get. But to talk to you about what's in capital, I come before you and I have some flexibility in what we're talking about as far as the request for the police department. The critical mission requests are obviously the patrol cars. If I've told you year after year, you can anticipate 3 to 4 patrol cars each year. We anticipate a life expectancy between 100 to 120,000 miles on those cars when they need to be taken out of rotation. I don't think I've done a good enough job to explain very briefly something to you. Each day, we have an officer that does an inspection sheet on their cars inside of our Zerker system. And so they're answering some simple questions about the condition of the car, how's the car operating, or any type of needs that the car may have. That goes into our Zerker system, which we then take the car out for maintenance and repairs. And then we have an Excel spreadsheet in which we're able to document the mileage on the cars, condition of the cars, expenditures on the cars. So we're able to see which cars we're forecasting are going to happen to have to be taken out of service each and every year. Until we have something that happens like we had this week. We had a brand new car this week, engine blows because it had an internal leak, oil leak inside. It was not noticeable by anybody else, but luckily that car is under warranty, so we're going to get that car repaired and replaced at no cost to us. But sometimes things like that happen with an older car, or unfortunately, if we get into an accident, those things influence what we ask for. So in the budget years that you see, we're typically asking, again, for 3 or 4 vehicles. As you see in our request, it is for 3 vehicles for next year. The mileage on those vehicles that we have range from 118,000, and these mileage are when we're anticipating getting the new cars in November. The mileage for these vehicles will be up to 118,000, 104,000, and then another 104,000. One of those cars has $10,000 worth of maintenance on it already, and anticipate another $4,000 worth of maintenance and repairs that need to be on that vehicle. So we're looking at $14,000 on one vehicle that we're asking to take offline. We also have the upfitting cost that went up a little bit this year, $21,000 for patrol vehicles, $9,000 for admin vehicles. Fortunately for us, one of those vehicles that we're replacing this year is an admin vehicle. Now, the rest of the things that you see on our capital are pretty much, as I told Charlie and Bob and Dana when I met with them, somewhat flexible, if you will, with the police department. They are needs, absolute needs. You may see at the very bottom, there's a line item for RMS, JMS, CAD, $350,000. You can breathe. We are not asking for that this year. We are asking for a grant from the state of South Carolina. We've put in for a grant to see if the state will give us that money from Ms. Jackie Terribly's office, and so we're waiting to hear back that we see that. The reason why we're asking for that is that's our RMS, our record management system, our journal management system, and our CAD. Why is that significant? You've asked us for a lot more data. I can only get you the data that I have in our system, and I'm tapped out on what I can give you right now. I'm not able to give you more data than what I give right now. Our citizens want more of a forward-facing system. They want to be able to go in and get their reports. They want to be able to see what's happening in the city. I cannot do that with our current system that we have right now. Third thing is we want to keep officers on the road as much as possible. Our current systems today, even though we have laptops in the car, the system's rather a little bit older. It was done before I got here. Chief Parker entered into an agreement with York County Clover and to have this system. And so we are limited on how we can navigate and limited how we can structure this system. So that's why we're asking for the evaluation of a new RMS, JMS, and a CAD system. This year, we are asking for the victim advocates person. That's at the request of members of this body. As we sat in a meeting, we discussed that position. That position is more than just calling someone and letting them know that there is a bond hearing. A victim advocates person will help us in so many ways when it comes to giving our victims the services they need. If you can imagine right now, if your son or your daughter was a victim of a violent crime in our city, fortunately we don't have a lot, but we're then turning them over to York County. And I have a big problem with that. We're here to protect and to serve the citizens of our community. And I'm turning them over to York County. I should be providing the services that they need to make sure that they have what they need to get that through that most traumatic event that they've ever had in their entire life. It's a lot more than just calling and letting somebody know there's a bond hearing. There's domestic violence plans that can be done. There's money that that victim can recoup for their loss, that victim advocates person can help them through the paperwork through the state of South Carolina. There's this data that shows that your prosecution rates go up when you have someone that is accompanying the victim and they're with them. If we have a domestic violence victim, whether it's male or female, during the overnight hours, and they need an immediate shelter, yes, the officer tries to help as much as possible. When you have a victim advocates person, that person comes on scene. They make sure that person gets to a safe shelter. They also make sure they get their needs met beyond just that day. So it's not about just answering a phone call. It's not about just letting somebody know in a bond hearing. There's so much more to that they could be offering our citizens here in TKK. You see the request for 2 patrol officers that we forecast at least in the 27, 28, 28, 29. That's anticipation of the development of the Grove. I spoke with Nick, and the first year, the 27, 28 is when he expects we could expect a substantial amount of growth that would be impacting the city from the Grove. And then the next year would be the final build-out phase to where, again, we'd be looking at adding additional officers. So again, we have some flexibility there, depending on the growth of the Grove. When it comes in, may I need that person next year? I might not. Depends on what's happening. I might be able to wait a year. So I do have some flexibility. I'm just trying to prepare ahead, forecast ahead to see what might be impacting the city. Questions or thoughts?
Thank you, Chief. Appreciate that. I have a couple of quick questions and then a couple things I'd like to state. The 2 requested patrol officers for $145,000 for each one of those. I assume that's for the patrol officer and equipment, vehicle,
Cars,
everything,
everything.
the whole 9.
Yes, sir.
Get them suited and booted. Okay. And then
I'm sorry, sir. That is as long as everything stays priced as it is today.
Gotcha. So we're, okay. The victim's advocate, I know that there's been discussion about that. I would like to see that instead of being 29, 30, I'd like to see that pushed up to 26, 27, if possible. I know the city's not made out of money, but that is a position that would be really beneficial to your point of what you just stated just a little while ago. The last thing that I'd like to say is the interactive simulation training system. I think all police departments need training, and anything that we can do to make our officers that much better. I would not want to put it out to 29, 30. I'd like to push that up to 26, 27 as well, so we can get that implemented and have our officers trained come next year. In fact, sooner is better than later.
So in my official request to the manager, I have requested for the cars and for the victim advocates person for this year.
Okay, good.
So you can prepare for that. And then with his approval, I'll add the other stuff that you're wanting as well.
Perfect. Thank you, sir.
Yeah, thank you, Brian. You beat me. I think the reason for that, you mentioned you were asking for the victim advocate this year, but our sheet's showing it on a different line for that. So I appreciate that. Just clarifying the adjustment. For the RMS, JMS, CAD Mobile, you mentioned that's a grant. Is that through the community impact
No,
state
state
grant?
appropriation.
Okay, so that's through the.
It's strictly if the General Assembly does appropriations. Word came to us that they were looking for public safety and infrastructure type things to potentially consider. We won't know until probably mid-June.
That's the one I was thinking of.
If they did
aligning with what we had
anything.
talked of. Yeah, I just
So-
wanted to make sure that was the one that I was thinking of that we had heard of during our Hill Day, because I'm very glad to hear we're going for that, because you miss 100% of the shots you don't take when it comes to grants. So I'm really glad that that's, and that was one I thought of. So I'm really glad to see that that's already in there and you're already ahead of the ball
Yes.
trying to put that request in.
Paperwork
So-
has been submitted.
And if there's things we can do as council to support that, since that's at the state level, I am all in for supporting grants and things like that to bring. And I know that Public Works, Public Safety was definitely one that they were more amenable to. So I'm glad to see that alignment with something that creates public-facing access, meets that need that you've discussed before. So thank you for pursuing that.
Chief, thanks for your service and the service of your men and women in
Thank
the
you.
police department. We greatly appreciate it. So I agree with everything that's been stated so far. We definitely need to resource you with the personnel, equipment, resources, the training to make sure that we stay one of the safest cities in South Carolina. So for the CAD, RMS, JMS system, that might be another one of those things where if that grant does not come through, maybe we can have conversations and prioritizing that for some of the capital funds surplus that we have. We definitely want you to have the best equipment the equipment you need. Obviously, we need to prioritize. We're going to have to make some tough decisions. And as a general statement too, I think it would be nice as we go through this to try and maybe get a little bit more of an idea on how we prioritize some of these items. Whether we I know it's difficult to do, right? And again, it's a general statement. It's not related just to you, Chief. But as we make these difficult decisions, determining how urgently we need things, are we talking about a work stoppage, significant deficit in services? The nice thing, the street sweeper, it's one of those things that's been kicked down, the can's been kicked down the road several times. And the point I'm trying to make is that it would be nice if we had a little bit more guidance on how high of a priority items are. So if we have to draw the cut line and not approve certain things, we know that that's not an urgent item that we're again kicking the can down the street. So and again, that's just a general statement. So, but back to your needs, Chief. But definitely, I agree with everything that's been said so far. Really would like to get to that equipment. So if that that grant doesn't come through, we'll keep an eye on that.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Two things, Chief. The victims advocate, I know we talked about it a little bit a couple times. Are you able to provide us with statistics of how often we went to the county for the use of their victims advocate?
How much time do I have, boss? Okay. So, yes, sir. And to save some time, I do have some packets that I can give you in my summary. I've talked about how many victims we've had per year. Last year, 281, 2024, 280, 2023, 412, 2022, 461. So for a 4-year total of 1,434, an annual average of about 358 if you divide those all together. And I think the big thing here that through our conversations, we really focused in on just that notification. And I do want to share a good victim advocates, and I've got their role here in South Carolina, and I'll read those quickly. Respond to the scene, provide crisis intervention and emotional stabilization, crisis intervention and trauma-informed support, domestic violence safety plans, explain victim rights and inform the victims about the criminal justice process, assist in preparing, submitting victim impact statements, help victims understand protections such as restraining orders and order of protections, court accompany the victim to court and bond hearing, advocate for the victim in proceedings such as bond hearings, because a lot of times the victims are so scared just to even make a statement against their defendants. Victim rights compliance, and provide referrals to social services, counseling, shelters, medical service, and others. You would be surprised how many mental health related calls that we get. And just to have a victim advocates person that we could have them follow up with that individual to ensure they're getting the help that they're getting would help us tremendously, because EMS does not respond to those calls. They say it's not a medical call. So the police, I can't respond to them. I don't have the services that I need. I don't have the training that I need. If I do that, then I have to do a pickup order and then take them somewhere against their will by the judge's request. So the victim advocate person would really help build a bridge in that aspect, and then ongoing follow-up and reduce repeat victimizations as well. And again, this was not something that just came about. For those of you that may not know, it's been in my 3-year plan, it's in my objectives for this year, and then through some other conversations it came about a little bit more quickly.
And I noticed you have it as an officer/victim advocate.
Yes, sir.
Is there a reason you want an officer versus a civilian?
Yes, sir. So one, we talked about this a little bit in our meeting, is that we wanted that person to do a dual role. If you have just a civilian, well, where do you put them at in the organization? Then they need to know the ins and out of law enforcement. They need to know the ins and out of what resources are available. They may be asked to drive a police car because it just said they got to respond to a scene. So what we would do is we would put that person in investigation, because that in investigations they work with a lot of our victims, but it gives them the freedom to go deal with victim-related things. But then also we're able to use them for other things if we need to make sure we're getting the value out of our dollar, like you and I talked about. They could assist with other investigations. They could assist with some property and evidence. They could assist with other things, and they're not just stuck in a box doing one thing, and we're not getting the value for our dollar.
And then the final question I had was about the interactive simulation training system.
Yes, sir.
Is that like a FAT system?
So these are the VR goggles. We did at one time have one within the department, but of course it was many years old, antiquated, and tried to get the new scenarios was going to cost us an outrageous amount. Mm-hmm. So I'd like to go back with the VR goggles. The reason why, FATS, as you know, and for those that may not know, FATS is when you look at a screen, and that screen projects an image, it projects a scenario, you respond to that. If you have the VR goggles, you're having it 360 degrees. So that officer is having to look all around, monitor things that are happening. It gives them more of a true life scenario, but it's more than just their response to that critical situation. We can put an officer in a situation, stop it before it gets to like a deadly force situation that what they're typically used for, and evaluate them on. We could stop the scenario ahead of time and say, okay, write your report. Let's see how you do in report writing. And from there, create a fictitious report, but we're measuring their skills and increasing their competencies in report writing, so we're better serving the community. So there's a lot more function than just those deadly force situations that those are typically used for, or shoot, don't shoot, if you will, that civilians hear quite a bit. It will test a lot of other skills and competencies that we can measure with the officers.
That's all I had. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
You had mentioned with the victim's advocate that fire department can't handle the certain calls that because they're not medical, they don't consider them medical. And then you said you as police can't answer to that, because what are you going to do? Take them and put them in somewhere that is, something they may not want. The victim advocate that you're suggesting is a police officer. Mm-hmm. So how is that how is that person able to do something different than what you're able to do now?
Most definitely. They wear a badge with their counselor. So they're able to network, create those networking resources with other individuals. I often say one of the greatest tools that we have as a cop is our mouth. If we learn to use it, it'll get us a lot of places. And so when you have that person that is not dressed in a uniform that's able to make that connection with that individual during their most crisis time of their life, and you're sometimes able to talk to them and they then agree on their own free will, I need help, let me go. I'll give you an example. The other day, we had a person that called us, same exact situation, wanted help with alcohol abuse. We had an officer that just happened to have some connections, made a phone call, gave them a ride to the place. Now, that's one uniform, but can you imagine if you're a female that's just been a victim of a rape? Do you want a male cop in front of you? Mm-mm. You want a female victim advocates person, somebody who's going to show you compassion and empathy of what you've been through. And so it's through those connections that we can get you a greater service.
So you're going to hire a female victim advocates?
I'm going to
person?
hire whoever's qualified for the job. If they
I'm
happen
just
to be a
going by the
female, then they're
example that
female.
you gave me.
Right.
That I would want a female. I
Yeah.
mean,
And typically you'd want a female, as I've seen in my experience, but I can't just hire for that. I will hire for the most experienced and the most qualified for the job. You proud, Ms. Dorr? Thank you, Ms. Dorr.
I don't have any more questions right now. I'll have a lot more when we actually go through that budget process, though.
And I'll have you answers. Y'all have a great night. Thank you so much.
All right, next up is Parks and Rec. I think Mr. Overton wins the award for the longest list, but it's a lot of really, really good things. So I will turn it over to him. Dustin?
Good evening, council. I was going to talk about all those things, but Chief had me at VR goggles, so I might add that to my list now. Appreciate y'all's attention to this, and I know listening to all these and trying to work through this is a tough business, especially each department, sharing with how important everything that they need, is. So I'm going to touch on a few things as we go through. I really want to focus on the more recent requests or the more current requests versus the ones that are further out. If you want more explanation on anything, feel free to let me know, and I'll be able to elaborate more. Going through your staffing, again, your maintenance team member is more contingent on further out growth with Windhaven Park and some of the other things that are coming through. The marketing and tourism manager, again, that is also a little bit, contingent on our growth in terms of the Grove and being able to really enhance what we're able to do with our marketing and tourism with the city. So with Catawba Park, the Grove, we see all of those working into conjunction and being able to really, bring people into the area to really bring that hospitality tax into the area as well. So we're talking about revenues and things of that sort. Some of the other ways that we look at it is going to be your marketing. How do we tell our story with the city and working on those strategies? Also with those sponsorships, building relationships with the businesses and things of that sort, all encompassing on really, like I said, bringing that tourism into the city and really trying to focus on some additional revenue streams. Like I said, I'll go through each one a little bit more specifically in terms of the priority. I heard, what's the most important, what's the need. So we'll jump right into vehicles, and our priority is going to be that F-250 four-door. So to give you an idea, we would be looking at replacing a 2007 Chevy Silverado. It has about 140,000 miles on it. It's almost to legal drinking age right now, at almost 20 years old. So it is a vehicle that has been passed around to multiple departments. It finally landed on us. You've heard, a lot of you guys have heard me say that, we were a department that was kind of grown and put together, and as we've gotten bigger and have taken on more responsibilities, we've seen we've needed our department to grow and really focus on those vehicles and equipment, which is why you see a lot of those in this plan right here. So that is a very important need. I will share a positive. That number is actually 55,000. So the person that we asked for the quote thought that we needed a diesel truck. We do not. So that is actually 55. So a little bit less expense there. Going through equipment, again, I'm going to focus on the most important one. It's going to be that front loader. So I heard someone mention that we wanted to look at ways to get creative and really try and stretch our money as much as we possibly can. So one of the things that we looked at is that's an existing piece of equipment that Public Works currently has. We actually got an inspection done on it, and I don't think I've seen so many things say oil leak or leaking fluid in anything I've ever looked at before. So it's not it's not an operating piece of equipment right now, but we're still forced to use it because with Public Works doing everything that they need to do with us, again, those change responsibilities, sharing those pieces of equipment is not a realistic way to go about our week. If a piece of equipment that's usable is used 4 days out of the 5 days, we're not able to do the things that we need to do. So going back to that, we had at first looked at just going to full through inspection and trying to repair everything that we possibly could. However, a staff member, through conversations that we had at one of our meetings, was what does it look like if we potentially trade out the current machine and look at purchasing another one. And a staff member went through and looked, and that's entirely possible. So for right now, the current machine is a 2012 CAT with 7,200 hours on it, 7,200 hours. And we can get a used one for about 1,200 hours a year, newer, and a better model for within that price range. So there are ways that we can, again, get creative and make things work as long as we have some additional funding there. Working our way down to our facilities, Madam Mayor, I know you mentioned we have a lot of parking lots on the list, but that is something that we need to focus on. Again, something that I've heard from council is aging infrastructure, and that's a very big focus on those facilities that are listed there. You know, my pride and joy, the Rundy Playground, we are still trying to work on that through a grant right now. Madam Mayor, thank you for your assistance on that. We're still hoping that we can get that passed through. Some of the other ones, again, are projects, your power in the median down Stonecrest, and one of the other ones that I do want to bring to light and explain a little bit more, pickleball. I know some people are like, oh my goodness, we're going to talk about pickleball again. But that is actually 3 different projects wrapped up into one. So I'd be remiss to say that we received our first ADA complaint. And by complaint, I don't mean someone just saying, oh, I can't believe it's not like that. It was how are we going to be able to get someone, our family member, to the courts in a wheelchair? You know, we just want to use the free course on the other side. So making sure that we're able to do that, making sure we're under code compliance, and the final part, I asked Tim, our city historian, how long has that light box been over in the corner of the pickleball courts? He said, well, it's been here since before I got here. So we're looking at the 1970s. That electrical box has been installed there. So the last time we had it fixed, it's pulling too much power. We would need to completely redo it, and it's more so of not, is it going to happen? It's when it's going to happen. So we want to make sure we can take care of all of those things at one time. The last part of that is replacing all the fencing, which is currently rusted, and it's going to install additional exit doors with panic bars so that it gives you that code compliance, that ADA accessibility for the entire facility. One of the things that I'll commend council on, previous council, and working with the Parks and Recreation Department is we have been able to bring in revenue through the pickleball courts. So this is something that we can also continue to show that we're going to invest in them for the people that are also investing back into purchasing the memberships for the courts. So I just want to mention that. The last part that I will say is the park action plan. It is listed at $50,000 a year. That can change. That can go up. It can go down. That is just an average. For example, last year was only about in the 30,000 range. This year would be a little bit higher, but that is going to include the Rundy Park fencing that you see right underneath it. So, and again, the next part is going to be all of your parking lots. But again, that's investing in your aging infrastructure, making sure you're fixing a lot of the drainage issues that exist in like Pitcairn Park, as well as Turner Field. The last one I keep saying last one, but I just keep going down the line. So I guess we'll just buckle in for that. It is the Turner Field lighting. It is a 20-plus-year-old facility. The lights have miraculously worked for that long. However, we are dealing with underground line issues. So anytime it rains, anytime there's any type of jostling underneath, we run the risk of those lights not turning on. The box itself has been reworked probably 10 times since the time that I've been here. The last time we got it fixed, they said it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when it's going to happen, and we still continue to use Turner Field 7 days a week. So if we do not have those lights, it would severely hamper our ability to put on recreation programs. The last one I will, just kidding, I'm just kidding. Moving over into the Beach and Swim Center, there are 2 items for your review at the Beach and Swim Center. One of them is going to be your replastering of the main pool. Council was very forward-thinking and making sure we were able to take care of the baby pool. This is going to be your routine maintenance of the large pool. One of the caveats with the big pool is that as we get closer to that end-of-life period, there's a possibility that it could pop at any time, and then that's an immediate replacement, or you can't use the pool. You would have to drain the pool, keep everyone out until the pool is completely replastered. So That's at that point where it's at its end of life. It's not fully there, but I just want everyone to understand that there's a possibility that it could happen between this year to next year. So we just want to make sure we're preactive, so it's not a preemptive, so that we're not in the middle of the pool season and all of a sudden we have to cancel it for 2 weeks or close it for 2 weeks and make some very unhappy people members. The last part is going to be the pool deck resurfacing. This has been something that we have tried to continue to push down the road as long as we possibly can by just making minor fixes. We're getting to a point where each part of the pool deck, whenever you're resurfacing it, it starts to get uneven. There's different colors, there's different wear, so it starts becoming aesthetics, and that also becomes a safety issue. So DHEC also, when they do their inspections, they do look at the any curbing or anything like that on the pool deck. So making sure we're resurfacing all at one time, that will make sure that it takes away any of those safety concerns. So it is a large undertaking because of not only the price, but because, as they so eloquently put it, once you start tearing things up, you don't know what you're going to find under a pool deck. So that is something that we have tried to continue to piecemeal together by doing sections at a time, but there is a point that we want to very consider to redo it as a whole. That was my last one, so my final joke. But if you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer them for you.
You mentioned, I think, 3 different things that are critical and that they could go at any moment, right? The pool, the lights at at Turner Field, and then I think you had one, the pickleball.
Mm-hmm.
If we're looking at this as a prioritization, you brought this up. Are they prioritized in that way?
It currently,
Or do they need to be looked at again?
currently in this order on the sheet, it's not prioritized in the sheet outside of the timeline.
I'm talking about the timeline. So you've got, for example, I just lost my space, but Turner Lights, I think you had it for the 27, 28. Should that not be 26, 27 if you've had issues with it and you've been babying it for so many years? Because the implication is that if those were to go out and it's in the middle of a season, then you no longer have a season. So that means that you're putting out your entire team structure, right? Same thing with the pool. If whatever you said happens, then you're looking at an entire pool season that is scratched off. I guess that's what I'm saying is if you have them in different years other than these items, if it breaks, it's going to have this huge impact. Shouldn't they be in 26, 27 rather than 27, 28 or 28, 29?
And I think that's the great part about it being a variable. There are ways, like if the lights were to go out, there's a possibility we could patch it again. There's a possibility that we could get an extended period of it. We're just at that time frame where it could last us another 2 years, 3 years, but it could go out tomorrow. So to answer your question, yes, it is a priority. Timeline-wise, unfortunately, a lot of our infrastructure is a priority. So trying to see what are realistic options that we can take on at this point is what I try to do in terms of the timeline. The lights itself is going to be a massive undertaking in terms of we need to do it outside of our recreation sports time frame. It would be obviously a bid process, so we want to make sure that we're able to do it correctly and take that time to do it. So I know I'm not answering your question directly with a yes or a no.
You are,
but there is a
guess-
lot of variables involved with those ones.
I guess the follow-up to the lights is also, like you said, it needs a bid process. It needs timing based on season and whether it's being used or not. So if all of those things are, what's going to drive how this comes together, then what happens if they go out in the middle of a season, right? So now you're reacting rather than planning for it. So I guess my question still is, why are we waiting to plan on it? Kind of tempting fate that we might be having to react to it or not have a season. And I don't need to have a specific answer. I'm just saying that seems to be one of those questions, right? Rundy Park, I know it's like your golden child, and I'm really hoping that we get that taken care of through PARD. but it's been stated that there are parts that can't be replaced. So, and that, you know, we might be running into safety and compliance issues. If we don't get that funding, how big of a safety and compliance issue is that? What risk are we opening the city for that? Those are things that we're going to have to know, because if we don't get funding, then is that going to be realistically have to be a must-do, because it does have insurance risks or safety risks that are attached to it? You know, is it a part that is not really doing anything, or is it a part that could actually be a risk? I would like to know more of that detail as we look through this in deciding how to assign those funds.
Sure, and I think anything could technically be a risk. In terms of the Rundy Playground, there's not currently anything that is a noted risk that we would be under pressure to fix immediately, or, you know, face any type of you know, legal action or anything like that. But with the Rundy Playground, like you mentioned, we are getting to a point where it would be basically a useless space as we continue to lose pieces of it. It's not necessarily that it would cause catastrophic harm to people, but it would be a playground that is essentially useless and just there. Now, the other part of that too is we would continue to maintain it to ensure that we don't have any of those type of safety issues. But at that point, you're maintaining a playground or a facility that you're just spending money just to spend money so that people can stand around or run up and down one side. So in terms of the need for it, you're looking at a park and a facility that's used 7 days a week. It's one of probably the main 3 epicenters of the city in terms of our events, where people go, where people play. It's one of the best facilities, or only facilities, in the back end of the peninsula. So I think it's more so of a quality of life and really investing in that section of it, because again, we still have our events. We have the egg hunt this weekend. We have our concert. So those are reasons that we need to continue to keep those up. And it's a 25-year-old playground. So I want to assure that we're not going to get to a point where staff is going to allow it to get it to a catastrophic level where we're hoping that kids don't get tetanus every time they use it, or they're falling, off the top of it or whatever. But that's what we want to get to. We want to make sure that we're continuing to enhance those facilities and keeping the standards that we want for the city.
Thank you.
Yeah, not to, just to sort of dovetail off of that, I do appreciate, this is probably one of the more complex ones with the moving parts. I mean, everybody's is very complex, but you've got the most pages definitely that I've got spread in front of me. I do think it would be helpful, this is not something we need to address tonight, but for the budget, you mentioned, because that was my first thought, was we have a pool at my house, and it's like, you have to time everything for downtime, so there's lead time on bids, there's lead time on that. When we go into the budget section, we can have some idea of those, just because that would help, because my first thought actually was like, well, it's not in 26, 27, because that's clearly when we'll be starting the process so that it can happen in the next year. But having that pinned down would be very helpful in terms of, okay, if this is something that has to go out for bid, and it has a seasonal contingency on when that work can happen as to be least disruptive to our community. Knowing that as part of this data would be very helpful when we're looking at the numbers as well, because that is going to impact when we might say this is when it should be prioritized.
Absolutely, and generally what happens is at the end of the pool season, we'll get a maintenance review sheet or maintenance review form on things that are getting ready to be, needed to be updates or fixed or things of that sort from our pool company. So typically, if I have that, I'll be happy to share that with you. We were fortunate over the past couple pool seasons that we were able to do a lot of upgrades in terms of like our pump and our baby pool and things of that sort. So these are some of the few remaining items that we need to make sure that we tackle, like you said, because it's always timed, and making sure that the pool is safe and it doesn't interrupt the pool season.
I just had one question, Dustin. It's a couple years out, but the Windhaven Park, I know we got the drawing, I don't know when it was, a year or two ago. And I said it then, I'll say it again, I think 1.5 million is way too much money. We got 400 grand from the developer. We're hoping to get a grant to match that. And the fact that the majority of it's gonna be green space, I just think we're going a little expensive on a open design park. So Again, I know it's not a couple years out, but I just wanted to put that out there to you. So,
Yeah, and that number there, that was based entirely off the engineering
Yeah, I
and,
remember
and their
that, yeah.
estimated costs. We did try to minimize as much, I guess, structures that we could, playgrounds and things of that sort. So a lot of what you're seeing in that is going to be your green space, your trails, the restroom facility, the disc golf course. So, as we get to that point, there is still that process of being able to bid it out as well. So that number may come back lower, it may come back higher. So it's just, that's what their estimate was in terms of the
yeah,
features.
they went crazy though. That thing was out of control.
This is where the possible dog park would be.
Yes, that's correct. Thank you. Absolutely. Thank you.
And if you need to shift from 2 years out to now because it is a priority, then I'd like to.
Absolutely.
Anything else for Dustin?
No, Dustin, thank you, buddy.
Thank you all.
All right.
Appreciate it.
We are now to our final one, last but certainly not least, Antonio Maturo with T-Cut.
Good evening, Mayor and members of council. As always, pleasure to be here. So the way it's broken down, heard a lot about reinvesting into the system, right? Back into our infrastructure. So you'll see a lot in here is all of that, is reinvesting back into our system. So first and foremost, infrastructure investment, system reliability, and risk reduction, compliance and operational standards, as well as some support on asset maintenance, operational capacity, and vehicle replacement. So I'll start from the top of this list. Going with the staff member. You can see that's pushed out to 2930. We just added 2, thankful to your approval and all. This here is, as the new developments come in, this will be able to sustain that additional growth on adding this individual. The next section there is for the vehicles, and that's part of our vehicle depreciation. As with the problem with the rest of the departments, we're having that same thing where we've got mileage exceeding 140,000 miles, 12 years or older on the vehicles, maintenance costs starting to exceed. We've probably somewhere in the vicinity of $15,000 or so over the course of the years that we've had at least 2 of the vehicles that we're asking in this upcoming budget. And we'll talk about that in the months to come. You'll see on there an easement machine and a trailer. That's just to give us better access to get into some of the tighter, harder to get to areas in the woods. As you know, in traditional TKK, there's a lot of manholes and lines that are way in the woods and in people's backyards and whatnot. But here comes the reinvestment portion of it, and it's through the manhole lining, the lift station upgrades, the cured-in-place pipe. Those are all reinvesting back into the system. Those are some of our larger numbers. You'll see how, especially with the cured-in-place piping, that's $200,000 each year. But as well as some of the other departments, we did chase after the state appropriation funds. We've asked for $1.5 million. That'll give us approximately about 3 miles of CIPP, cured-in-place piping, if that funding were to come. If it doesn't, like you heard some of the others, these are some placeholder numbers. The $200,000 per year really won't give us much. It'll give us about a half a mile, perhaps, of of piping replacement. And this is all non-excavation, right? This is all slip lining of the piping is how this is. So it's a trenchless replacement of pipe. However, we are currently have an open grant. We can't apply for another grant until that grant is closed. So once our wastewater treatment plant is done, then we can apply for the next one. We're currently working on, with our engineer, a PER. That way that can give us the opportunity to ask for the additional grant funding. So we hope to have that in place by next March to be able to put in for that grant. And of course, still keeping our fingers crossed that we will get those state appropriations. You'll see also on there is the lift stations. You'll see 50,000 straight across the board on that. That'll come through our operational budget. That'll fit within there, as long as you all approve that to happen. We also have, let me see, the manhole lining. So that'll kind of be part of, that'll go hand in hand with the CIPP. So depending on how those grants come in, if not, that'll be an additional $50,000. That'll give us that $50,000, depending on the depths of the manholes, will give us somewhere between a range of 8 and 10 manholes that we'll be able to line and remediate. Let me touch on that Windhaven Tower. This one here, it's on there. This is really not an optional ask. It's actually a compliance thing, so it's something that we definitely have to push through on that. We've gone as far as we can until we cannot go any further. This is to add the new tank that we added in the Windhaven tank. So that's just extending our contract, adding to the contract that we already have in place for that Windhaven Tower. We're asking for 2 standalone bypass pumps. One is at our Gray Rock lift station outside on the outer part, and one is at lift station number 12 that's located off of the golf course. What those are going to do is instead of a generator at those stations, this standalone pump, what it'll do is whether we have a power outage or we have both pumps go out, this pump can take its place and continue the operations. So it covers time and time again on what we need to make sure that we keep that water or that sewer in those pipes and delivering where it has to. Currently, we're looking at these 2 stations. The one on the outside, which is Gray Rock, that takes multiple lift stations to it. That's our last source before it gets pumped out to Rock Hill. Number 12, it's got about 3 or 4 consecutive lift stations that goes to that one before. That's the end one before it goes over to our treatment plant. So those are 2 areas that are highly important to us to get those standalone bypass pumps too. Also in there, you'll see some additions. One is kind of an addition / renovation. One is to our wastewater treatment plant not really a treatment plant, on record treatment plant, but it's number 4. It's one of the offices that we have done off of Timberlake. That's to add an addition as well as renovate our lab that we have within that facility, just to kind of keep us within compliance with SCDES. Then you also see an addition to the Gray Rock lift station. Again, hear ye loud and clear about protecting our infrastructure. That's what that's all about. It's giving us the additional space so we can house some things in-house. And it'll give us the ability, currently right now where our building is on TKK Drive, it'll also give us the ability to have some equipment on the outer part. So, listen, a lot of the work that we do is unseen work. It's in the ground. We don't see it. However, we are the police and fire of the water and wastewater, right? We are the police and fire of safety when it comes to that drinking water. So I know our people, our staff really don't get that embellishment of being recognized and whatnot, but they do. They work hard on with everything that they do every single day with the limited resources that they have. So everything that we're asking for is definitely not a wish list. It's truly is a need list to make sure that we continue to do what we need on a daily basis, as well as reducing cost. When we talk about cure in place pipe, that's reducing cost. Anytime we can reduce I&I, so inflow and infiltration coming into our system, reduce the cost. It reduced the cost of treatment. It reduced the cost whether we're sending it to Rock Hill, whether we're sending it to our wastewater treatment plants. We're reducing cost of treatment, and we're reducing electrical costs as well of that treatment process. With that being said, any questions?
I'll go first. So thank you for sort of noting the ones, especially the water tower with sort of the mandatory compliance ones, because obviously your department's got that component. We talk about how lean our city runs, but yours is the one department where I love redundancy because, everybody, as you said, this is an unseen thing. This is something my family dealt in was public health and sort of this side of things. And my dad's big thing was always saying, if I'm doing my job right, nobody knows I exist. But it's a really bad day when suddenly I'm out there and people know who I am and what's going on in my world. So I appreciate that a lot of this looks like it is geared towards keeping you guys out of the public eye, because everybody sees when the trucks are out and there's water flowing on the street and the gravel's getting put in over a patch. And it's a challenge, especially in the older parts. I know with these pipes, some not even existing, it's like a hollow in the ground. So thank you for the very detailed thing. So just to make sure I understand, so obviously we have the grant for the wastewater upgrade that's happening over off of Marquesas. I'm forgetting the number for which plant that is, but they've got the tank in. So you said that grant, the earliest, because of the inability to get two at the same time, would be March next year is what we're
Correct.
looking at. It would be the soonest that you could
That's
apply
correct.
or achieve another grant. Okay, thank you. That helps for knowing, because you've marked some that could be potential grant ones, but that helps to know what the timeline would be, that those could potentially be an option.
And that's through RIA. I mean, we'll be chasing some other grants as well, whether it's through the EPA, whether it's through FEMA. We'll be chasing others. Correct.
Yeah, so, Antonio, thank you for what you and your whole team do. Absolutely love it. It's wonderful, and I echo what Councilmember Jones just said about everything, and investing in the infrastructure of our system is absolutely great. My question to you is, I don't want to run this section lean if there's something that we need, and there's $200,000 as an example from the cured-in place pipe. If you need 225 or 250, if there's something else that you need to make sure that the system operates efficiently and it's safe for our community, please make sure you focus on that and provide that to us to make sure, and there's a justification to make sure that we stay safe and there's no, boil water advisories or sewer, all the stuff that way. So that's the only thing I want to say.
Yep.
Your budget are all enterprise funds, correct? You're self-funded, so everything that you've put on here is from the fees that are collected
Correct.
from our residents. What I appreciate is the fact that you've got you are so consistent in putting out your projections over a number of years for those repetitive improvements, and that ties in so well with how I would like to be able to look at a budget and know what to expect going forward. I don't think that you've ever had an issue with going over budget with your planning. So I appreciate that, and I do appreciate the thought that you've put into this. And yes, aging infrastructure is something that is a huge concern. How our infrastructure is tied to the health of our lake and the service to our residents, all of that is very integrated, and it's all very important. So between you and stormwater, it just seems like that those are when something bad happens, like Heather said, everybody knows about it. So to be proactive rather than reactive on your planning is something that I really appreciate seeing, and I do think that you are probably the most consistent in being proactive in looking at that at your budget and how it affects your year over years. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, I would just echo that, please thank your staff, the unsung heroes who do all the work that we don't see day to day. Where Parks and Rec is very visible, you said it, we don't really see the equipment that you guys put in place, but it's so critical. And we all know that putting off, repairs and maintenance for infrastructure just costs more money down the road. So I definitely appreciate you staying on top of that and putting together this detailed projection. So, so in terms of the fees that we charge, so are we able to adjust the fees that we charge residents if the infrastructure repairs that we have are, I guess, exceeding the amount of capital that's available? In other words, do you adjust that year to year based on the
Yes.
cost of?
We bring the fee schedules for everything in the city. Council approves those on an annual basis as part of the budgeting process.
Okay, okay, great. No, I don't have any questions. Thanks for the information, and, yeah, keep up the great work.
Thank you.
Want to echo and say, thank you to you and your team. You do a great job, and the nice thing about T-Cut, you just make it easy to say yes. So thank you for that.
The alternatives are not good.
Yes, thank you.
Thanks, Attorney Al.
Council, that is it for us for this evening, unless y'all have any other questions or thoughts or anything?
I
At this
appreciate
point?
all the work that's gone into this. I know that as we get into the budget and actual specific conversations, there'll probably be more questions. Having a prioritization schedule to me is something that would be helpful, not just within each department, but across the entire the entire budget. How does the city see this as a priority, critical versus a want and an improvement? That would be helpful to when we're looking at it as the overall budget, and then also with each single department.
Okay.
And I just want to say, we've said thank you sort of piecemeal, but thank you so much to all the department heads. I know you put a lot of work into this, and we ask a lot, and thank you for taking our questions and continuing to give us all those details we ask for, whether it's because we don't understand something or we're trying to understand your priorities, so that we can all work together to do what's best for our city, because I know that's where everybody's heart is, and it does show. And I do really, really respect how much our city does with so little. That's huge. I don't think people truly understand. When Charlie says we run a lean ship, we run a lean ship. And the fact that we're nitpicking is a good sign, because it means you guys are getting it right more often than not. So I appreciate that. Thank you.
I'll just add real quickly, thanks to all the department heads, and I know this was a new ask this year. I know Charlie and staff to put this together, and I know it took a lot of time and effort. We really appreciate it. It really helps us understand the budget in a long-term view, so we can hopefully get you what you need. And so thank you.
Yeah, and thank you again, yeah, to the department heads, and please thank your staffs for us on behalf of the council. We truly appreciate what you do each and every day for us, so thank you.
Yes, thank you, ditto, exactly what everyone just said. With that, thank you guys for being here. I'd like to make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Should I call for a motion to adjourn?
You don't have to call for the motion, but you got to call for the vote.
Can I have a vote for adjourning, please? Say aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
There you go.